So at any time when you have a data source from the sample and you need to test a hypothesis by doing statistics, it must be a pair of statements. One is, we name it as the alternate hypothesis, and other one is the null hypothesis. And we are not free to develop those statements. Rather, certain statement can be either a part of null hypothesis and certain other statement can be part of alternate hypothesis. But you decide on the basis of sample data. So when you test the hypothesis, so there is always a possibility of error. What do I mean by this? That there is always a possibility that you are going to commit an error. So in hypothesis testing, you can have 4 possible situations. So you can have 4 possible situations. One possible situation is that in the population, when I will going to use the word in the population, mean what is the reality in the population? So first condition, in the population, the null hypothesis is being accepted. And in your statistical testing, you also accept the null hypothesis. So that is, in that case, your testing is giving you the same results, whatever there is reality in the population. And you can say that you made the right decision. And your testing was appropriate. You decided what was reality in the population. So in that case, you made the right decision. There is a second situation that is possible, that in the population, the null hypothesis is being rejected. That means that in the population, if null hypothesis is being rejected, that means that the alternate hypothesis is being accepted in the population. And in your testing, when you test the hypothesis, you also reject the null hypothesis. In that case, once again, your testing reflected the reality, what was reality in the population. Your testing reflected the same results what was there in the population. Once again, you made the right decision. There can be a third situation, that in the population, the null hypothesis is being accepted. While in your testing, the null hypothesis is being rejected by you. So in the population, what was real, that the null hypothesis was accepted, but the data you gather gave you evidences that supported that you need to reject the null hypothesis, and you rejected the null hypothesis. But actual reality was that in the population, the null hypothesis was accepted, but you by an error just rejected the null hypothesis. So that is an error. So that is the first kind of error, when you reject a true null hypothesis. And we name that error as type 1 error. That's the first possible error you can commit. And normally it is being represented by alpha. There can be fourth possibility in the nature. These are all possibilities that could exist in nature. That in the population, the null hypothesis is being rejected. So in the population, the null hypothesis is being rejected. But in your testing, you fail to find evidences to reject the null hypothesis, so you accepted a null hypothesis. Once again, in that case, your findings, your testing gave you opposite result. That in the population, the null hypothesis was rejected, but in your testing, you failed to reject the null hypothesis, so you accepted the null hypothesis. So your results are contrary to the what is reality going on in the population. In that case, once again, you have committed an error. And that error, we name it as the type 2 error. When you accept a wrong null hypothesis. And we represent it by beta. So there are four possible situations that can exist in nature. That in the population, you accepted the null hypothesis, and in your testing, you also, in the population, the null hypothesis was accepted, and in your testing, you also accept the null hypothesis. In the population, the null hypothesis was rejected. In your testing, you also reject the null hypothesis. Right decision in both cases. Third case, in the population, null hypothesis was accepted, but you rejected the null hypothesis in your testing. That is type 1 error. In the population, null hypothesis was rejected, but in your testing, you accepted the wrong null hypothesis, type 2 error. So there are two types of errors that are possible in hypothesis testing. One is type 1 error and other is the type 2 error. So I can develop a table where I can highlight all those things in the form of a table. So this is the reality in population. Either the null hypothesis accepted, and I can represent the null hypothesis with H naught. So H naught accepted. And in the population, it's possible that the null hypothesis is rejected. And when you carry out hypothesis testing, so in your testing, you also have two possibilities. H naught accepted, and H naught rejected. So when your testing corresponds to the reality in the population, both your testing and population, they accept it, that's the right decision. And once again, here you have the right decision when your testing also rejects the null hypothesis, and in the population, null hypothesis is also rejected. But when you comment this kind of error, that in the population, the null hypothesis is being accept it, but you rejected it, that is type 1 error, alpha. And in the population, maybe the null hypothesis is being rejected, but you accepted it wrong, that is type 2 error. So in the next step, we need to look at where we can have those type 1 and type 2 errors. But before switching to that, I want to show you a table of t-test, a test that is used for the comparison of mean. So it's a t-test, T. Let me switch to that. Give me a couple of minutes. It's taking too much time. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And please confirm me if the PowerPoint presentation is visible on your screen.
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Okay. And can you read those numbers that are visible on your screen?
No, sir. It's blur.
Are they visible now?
Yes, sir. It's visible for blur.
Okay. So what happens that although that is not a component of this course, because this is something that normally statisticians they do it, and they do it and they becomes available everywhere. You just need to Google a T table and they will going to give you all those values of T table. In this way, you just need to Google a chi-square. So they give you, these are the all probability distributions. And as we do not have a separate course of probability distribution, so I discuss nothing. I just introduce you with the probability and then a conditional probability, because that is something a statisticians need to do it for development. That has nothing to do with testing, because in the testing, these tables, they are already available. So what they have done here is that they have given you a distribution of a normal distribution table. Normal curve, when majority of your observations, they are either on the mean or close to the mean. And here they give you those critical values. So for example, at 0.10, at 10%, and when your sample size is, when your degree of freedom is 1 and your sample size is 2, you have a value of 3.08. When you have a degree of freedom 5, at 10%, you have a value of 1.42. So this is 1.42. When you have a sample size of 12 with degree of freedom 11, your value is 1.37. So in this way, these are just numbers, and you can just Google a T table and you will going to see all these numbers. So I will switch to a new page and then I will going to tell you. If you look at any T table, you will going to see all those things, and here you will going to see it will be written like this, 0.15. That means 15% error. 0.10, that means it's 10% error. And here they will going to give you about the degree of freedom. You just need to remind right now, remember that right now is that degree of freedom has linked with sample size. So it's always n minus 1. And I will going to discuss why it's n minus 1. So it will be written like this, 1, 2, because you can have different samples in your testing. So they have calculated for every sample size. In this way, your sample size can increase. And here they have a value like this. Let's suppose this is 3.14. And then another value like 2.95. A third value 1.56. And then it moves on 1.43. And same here, maybe it starts at 6.26. And then it will be 6.00. Then you will going to see it like 5.35. And in this way, 5.01. These you have different values against every sample size. And here you have value of alpha, and here you have the sample size. So you decide the level of significance by yourself, and you know your sample size. So what these distributions, they tell you that, for example, they are normally for normal distribution, that when your data set distribution is normal. So what happens that normally you have these, whenever you have a normal distribution, you have this bell-shaped curve, where in the center of the bell shape you have the mean, median, mode, and you have majority of observations here. So that relates to the frequency of observation. And these are all your numbers. That's for 1, 2, 3. It can be start with anyone. So let's suppose here the population mean is 3, and you see a normal distribution that whenever you move away from the mean, you will going to see a bell-like curve with fewer and fewer observation at the extremes. And here they have given you something like this. For example, if you decide 10% alpha, that means you are ready to tolerate 10% error. If you are going to decide that I will going to test my hypothesis at 5%, that means the value of alpha will be 5%. So if this is the entire region, that zone will be the 5%. And here they will going to give you a critical value. From here, your rejection starts. Let's suppose this is that value, that is 6.26. So this is all rejection zone where you need to reject the null hypothesis. And this is all your acceptance zone. Normally, when you have two-tailed test, you have acceptance zone in the center you have a zone of acceptance in the center, while rejection both at lower end as well as the upper end. In that case, if you decide an error of 5%, that means you have a 2.5% on this end and 2.5% on lower end. That's the error. While if you have an acceptance zone only on one side, in that case, if you have a rejection zone only on one side, in that case, the entire 5% will be on one side. So that's for your conceptual understanding. So if I was going to develop a third graph, and if I was going to ask you, so they have already developed those values. You do not need to develop them again. And even you do not need to learn how to develop those values because they are already available for you. And they have nothing to do with statistical testing. You just need to use these values. And that's all. So let's suppose if you decide a 5% error, so against every error, they will give you a value. That's why table includes so many things. So you can see it is telling you at 40% error, 25% error, 10% error, 5% error, 2.5% error, 1% error, 0.05% error, and then it's 0.005%, and then it's 0.001. So it normally it gives you value against most of that time. I mean, how much you error want to keep, you will going to get that value. And this is all what you need from a table. And that will not going to add to your testing. That will not going to, if you have the value of that table, that's all. That's why we do not teach anything how to develop those tables, because that's for statistician, that's for their practice. But when it comes to their application, even the statistician only need that value. For example, if this is their value, they will only need that value, and they will going to get that value from the table. So those tables, they will going to give you a critical value at certain points. Let's suppose if you decide 10% error, so it will going to give you that critical value. It can be anything. Let's suppose this value is 10.25. In that case, you have an error of 10%. So this is the zone of rejection. And this is the zone of acceptance. So if your sampling distribution is somewhere here, you have to accept it. But if your value is somewhere here in this rejection zone, you have to reject it. So after testing, you will going to get a calculated value. And you need to compare your calculated value with the value of table. That is your critical value. If your calculated value is greater than the tabulated value, this means your sample is in the rejection zone, and now you need to reject it. If your calculated value is less than that critical value, that means your sampling falls in the acceptance zone. In that case, you have to accept the null hypothesis. This is a one step, very simple, that compare with the table, because in the table they have given you like this, that they have given you a value from where rejection zone starts. Let's suppose it's a value of 10. And it will be written here like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And here it will 10, and then 11, 12, 13, 14, so on. So on T table, they have highlighted that value, that is 10. So after your testing, if you get a value of 11, that means your sampling will fall in rejection zone. In that case, you have to reject the null hypothesis. If you get a value of 12, in that case, you have to reject the null hypothesis because your calculated value is greater than this table value. If you get a value of 13, even in that case, you have to reject it. But if you get a value of 7, in that case, you have to accept it because that 7 lies in the acceptance zone. So these are all tabulated values. Only thing that you need is the tabulated value. And now, as you know that on distribution, you have a zone of rejection and you have an acceptance zone. Only difference is that normally we reject at both ends. So for simplification, I just expressed it on a higher side. So now I'm going to develop a real page when you have rejection zone on both sides. So it will be like this, that it will start let me switch to a blank slide. It is like this, that it will start in the center at 0 and then it will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let's suppose if your value is 10, so 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. If you have rejection zone on both sides, so let's suppose if I have an error of 5%, if I decide that I will have 5% alpha, in that case 2.5 will be on the higher side and 2.5 will be on the lower side. So here you have a value like this, -1, -2, -3, -4, and eventually this will be -10. And then -11, -12, -13, -14. That's why at any time when you get a calculated value, you do not need to look at the symbol minus or plus. Because if it is being rejected at 10, it is also rejected at -10. So any value that will be greater than 10 or anything that is less than -10 will also be rejected. -11 will be rejected. +11 will be rejected. -10 will be rejected. +10 will be rejected. -12 will be rejected. +12 will be rejected. So we do not care about the calculated value. We just look at the calculated value. If it is 5, we just look at 5. Even if it is -5, we do not care about that symbol. We just look for the 5 and compare it with the 10. Because we know that when we have rejection zone on both ends, it's only a difference of symbol. So what will be rejected towards the negative side will also rejected on positive side. So for your simplification, I just included the rejection zone on one side and acceptance in the side. So here you have the zone of acceptance. And here you have the zone of rejection. So now I will ask you that why we cannot eliminate the error. We cannot eliminate the error because, let me show you with the diagram. Now I have a question to ask, that if this is our rejection zone, so that's all. So I'm making it only on one side to make it clear. So if this is all rejection zone, and this is all acceptance zone, now I want to ask you a question. Where you can have type 1 error? Please, are you listening? Where you can have a type 1 error? Can you listen me? Are you listening me? Can you hear my voice?
Yes, sir, we can hear, but we don't understand what you're trying to
I'm
understand.
asking you. I told you that there are two types of error. One is the type 1 error. And what is the type 1 error? We represent it as the alpha. So I'm asking you that what is type 1 error? Type 1 error is the probability of rejecting a true null hypothesis. So on this graph, where you can have the type 1 error? You can have type 1 error only when you reject something. So this is an area where you can have type 1 error. And where you can have the type 2 error? Type 2 error is the probability of accepting a wrong null hypothesis. So that must be in the acceptance zone. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So type 1 error is the probability of rejecting a true null hypothesis. So where you can have type 1 error where you reject the null hypothesis. So this is the all area where you reject the null hypothesis. So you can have type 1 error here, and where you can have type 2 error. Type 2 error, we define the type 2 error as the probability of accepting a wrong null hypothesis. So where you can have the type 2 error, where you are accepting something, and this is your acceptance zone. So you have type 2 error in the acceptance zone, and you have type 1 error in the zone of rejection. What's the problem here? That at any time, so if this is type 1 error, so that's area of type 1 error. And this is an area of type 2 error. And here I have a value like this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on. So at any time, if I try to reduce my type 1 error, so that's area of type 1 error. So if I will going to try to reduce my type 1 error, so I just reduce it by, let's suppose, 5%. So I'm just reducing my type 1 error. So now what will going to happen? That the probability of committing a type 2 error will increase. And it will keep on increasing as long as I will going to keep on reducing my type 1 error. So here with this, if I just reduce my type 1 error to this point, now my type 2 probability of just the occurrence of type 2 error, or the probability of having a type 2 error will also increase. But at the same time, so if I just try to decrease my type 2 error, the probability of committing the type 1 error will increase. That's why I have to manage it. If I will going to reduce my type 1 error, the probability of committing a type 2 error will increase. If I just try to reduce type 2 error, the probability of committing type 1 error will be reduced. Additionally, if I will going to keep on reducing type 1 error, let's suppose initially, but before saying that thing, I will going to add another thing. Although there are two types of errors that are possible. One is type 1 error and other one is the type 2 error. But when we test the hypothesis, we just take the responsibility of type 1 error. Why? Just tell me. When we test the hypothesis, why we take responsibility of only type 1 error? Ladies and gentlemen, please respond my question. Now
Sir, because in hypothesis we can reject something.
Yes,
That's why
that's the perfect answer.
That's why we take it in a rejection zone in type 1 error.
We take the responsibility of in hypothesis testing about the type 1 error only because when we test, we test it for only rejection. When we reject the null hypothesis, we have some claim. We have some finding. We declare it wrong. And when we reject a null hypothesis, there is a possibility that you can commit a type 1 error. Probability of rejecting a true null hypothesis. Just remember previous line where I have written 4 options. That's one. The probability of rejecting a true null hypothesis. That in the population null hypothesis is accepted and you rejected it. So as in our testing, we try to reject something, there is a possibility that maybe we're going to commit a type 1 error. And we take responsibility of that type 1 error. When we accept the null hypothesis, we do not declare it true. So that's why type 2 error we do not bother about, because we do not have any finding. So where we are most interested in, where we have entire responsibility, is the type 1 error. And we need to try to eliminate it as much as possible. That's desirable. Is it true? Because the responsibility of type 1 error is on over testing. Do you agree with that sentence? Just feel comfortable and respond me. That as we test for rejection, so when we reject, there is a possibility to carry out type 1 error, and we take the responsibility of, we have to take the responsibility of type 1 error. In that case, we need to reduce the type 1 error as much as possible. Do you agree with this statement?
Sir, it's possible when we increase type 2 error, then type 1 error will reduce.
We do not need to bother about it, but the ideal is that we need to reduce the type 1 error as much as possible, because that responsibility is on us. Do you agree with that statement?
Yes, sir.
Because the responsibility of type 1 error is on us, because we test it for rejection, and when we reject something, we claim it. And when we reject, we say that this is wrong. And when we say it wrong, that means if at that time, if we reject it, we declare it wrong, there is a possibility that we can commit a type 1 error, because now we have a claim. Do you agree with this statement? It is visible. I mean, it's appearing on the written form.
Yes, sir.
So as the responsibility of type 1 error is on over hypothesis testing, it's always desirable to reduce the type 1 error as much as possible. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
We want that type 1 error to be as low as possible. So by default, in statistics, we have 5% alpha or 0.05 value of alpha. That also means the 5%. You can say it's 5% probability that whatever will 5% probability that if we're going to reject a hypothesis, over finding is wrong. That means we have 95% confidence on our results that we are right. So by default, in statistics, we use 5% alpha. If our experiment is very, very sensitive, and if we can ensure the maximum uniform conditions, in that case, mean if our study has an impact on human or animal health? In that case, we do not want to be wrong, because that could have a very serious consequences. In that case, we reduce the type alpha to 1%, or we keep an error of 0.01. By default, 5%. But if experiment is very much is being conducted in a lab where you have more and more control in the conditions and the study is very much sensitive, in that case, we keep alpha as 0.01 or 1% error. And if the study is conducted somewhere outside and we have less and less control and the experiment is not very much sensitive, do not have huge impact on human or animal health, in that case, we keep alpha at 10%, where we have minimum control. So as we can, now my question is that as we can decide in hypothesis testing that what should be our error in our testing, why not always make it 1% or even make it less than that 0.05%? It's 0.5%. That means it's 0.0005. Double zero. Means less than 1%. Why not make it error to like something like this 0.000001%? It's always good to have less and less error. As we have the option to decide about the error, why we keep it 5% by default, and in sensitive case if we keep it at 1%, and in where we have no control we keep it at 10%. Why?
Sir, I want to ask something relevant to your question. The question is that if we have rejected it, that means we have evidence to reject it. And if we have evidence to reject it, that means the error should be 0%. Why is it 0.5?
That evidence comes from the source of sample, not from the population. And there is always a possibility that maybe whatever you are telling on the basis of sample is not true in population, because you used only a fraction and decide about everyone. This is reality for sample, definitely, but now you are applying it to the population. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Now respond my question. I mean, I was generous enough to respond your question. Now it's your turn to respond me back. Any volunteer?
So we can do that, but how can we apply on population? If we're applying it, if we're going to generalize it, we cannot take it to that minimum value.
Hey, we can take it. Yes, we can take it to the minimum value. No issue. Even we can take it, and we can just request a statistician to calculate the probability and give us a critical value at like this 0.00000001. And hopefully the statistician will going to take only 1 day to give you the probability at this level, where you have that much minimum error. Now I'm going to tell you why we cannot minimize it in every experiment to very, very smaller value. And let me try another normal curve. And look at it carefully. So here it starts from here, acceptance zone. So normally in the center you have a value 0, and then you have a 1. I will miss few digits to make my things clear. Let's suppose it's 2, it's 4, it's 6, it's 8, it's 10, it's 12, it's 14, it's 16. These are all hypothetical values. And here I will going to sketch my rejection zone. It will start at 10. And so on. So let's suppose my starting point is that I keep error at 10%. So in hypothesis testing, if we will going to see more and more evidences that supports the rejection, there is a prayer call, so give me a couple of minutes. Is it okay for you?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Good afternoon. Can we start now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I was answering that question, that why we do not keep error to the lowest level all the time. To our lowest possible value all the time. So let's suppose we started at 10% alpha. That means you are ready to tolerate 10% type 1 error. So in that case, as you will going to get more and more, so when you test hypothesis, when you are going to perform any test, as you will going to get more and more stronger evidences for rejection, the value of that test or the calculated value will going to increase. So for example, if the evidences are more, it will have a 8. And if the evidences are more and more strong, it will have a value of 10 and it will have a value of 11, let's suppose. Evidence, strength of evidence is increased, the calculated value will going to increase. And let's suppose you have a calculated value of 11. In that case, what you are going to do? Where the 11 falls? It's somewhere here. And as now your calculated value is 11 and your critical value is 10, that you will going to check from the table. And now as your calculated value is greater than your critical value, now it will be fall in rejection zone. So now you will going to reject it. That means that much evidences they were sufficient to reject it. And let's suppose if I will going to reduce my error from 10% to, let's suppose, 5%. So what will going to happen? Let's suppose here I have the 5%. So this is the critical value of 5%. Now my critical value will increase to 12. Now my error is 5%. But now if I will going to get a value of 11 calculated, what I will going to do now? My critical value is 12 and my calculated value is 11. It is less than my tabulated value. What I need to do now?
You have to accept it.
Mean the evidences, they are not sufficient when I keep my error at 5% to reject it. So I have to accept this. Although I was able to reject at 10%, but now I'm failed to reject it at 5%. So when you accept the null hypothesis, I told you that means you do not have any finding. So in order to reject at 5%, I need more stronger evidences. Let's suppose another data set, and that has even more stronger evidences. So it rejects at 14. So I get a calculated value of 14. So what will going to happen? With this, with 14, now I have a calculated value of 14. So I will going to reject it because my critical value is 12. Let's suppose it's now my calculated value is 14, so it's in the rejection zone. So I have the capacity, I have sufficient evidence to reject it. Let's suppose what will going to happen, that if I will going to reduce my error from 5% to 2.5%. Now my critical value will become 16. So where I will get a calculated value with 11, whether I will going to get a calculated value 12, whether I will going to get a calculated value 13, whether I will going to get a calculated value 14, even those evidences, they are not enough at 2.5% error. Although those evidences, they were enough at 5% when I was ready to tolerate 5% error, but they are not enough to when I will going to keep my error at 2.5%. So what I will going to do at 2.5 when I will going to get a calculated value of 14? What I will going to do that? Now my critical value or the value of my table is 16 and my calculated value is 14. What I will going to do that? I have to accept it. Is it okay? I have to accept the null hypothesis. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Let's suppose if I will further reduce my error from 2.5 to 1%. Now my critical value will become 18. And now even if I will going to get a value of 16, I will fail to reject it. I will going to fail to reject at 17. So I need a very strong evidences to reject at 1% error. And let's suppose if I make that error to 0, my calculated value will be, my critical value will be, if I will go back to all those values and eventually reaches to the point where I will say it's 0, my critical value will be infinity. Infinity means no value, at no value I will going to reject it. So when I will going to keep my error 0, I cannot reject at any value because my critical value will be infinite. That's why when we have more and more sophisticated environment in labs, more control on things, so it is always expected that if something contributes, you will have greater deviation, and when you have the greater deviation, you will have greater evidences. So you will have the possibility that you will going to reject it at 1%. But if you are conducting a study on wildlife and you have less and less control, in that case, it even at 10%, it's not easy to reject because you do not have lots and lots of control on the environment. Is it absolutely clear? Why so it's a gamble. That's why by default we tolerate the error of 5%. So it varies from 10% to 1% in highly sophisticated team. Do you have any questions regarding the error in hypothesis? Just feel comfortable and tell me. Is it clear to everyone? Just say it yes or no.
Yes, it's clear.
So if you do not have any question, now I will going to dismiss the class.
Yes, sir,
Hopefully
it's clear.
we will going to continue from the same place in our next lecture. So you have another 2 minutes. If you have any question, just feel free and ask. Otherwise, I will dismiss the class. Thank you very much. Class dismissed.
Allah Hafiz.